Create that life legacy, designers. Amber Prosia here. Welcome to episode number 11 of the Parenting Biz Podcast, coming to you every Monday. Now let's chat with this week's featured guest, Mark Wagner. Mark, are you ready to inspire us on your journey of how you formulate the life you've always wanted for yourself and your family?
I am.
Awesome. Mark is the founder of Next Level Worldwide, AM Services, a leadership development company providing business and personal development, coaching, mentorship, seminars, events, consulting, and training. They specialize in helping individuals and companies change their habits and build their success image and transform what they know into what they do, helping them create results through a proven step-by-step process. Mark worked closely with the leader in human potential and development, the world-renowned Bob Proctor. Through his own personal experience using the power of mind to build wealth and the strategies he's discovered through Bob, he now helps entrepreneurs, companies, and individuals to reach the next level of success in their life and business. Mark, please take a minute to fill in any gaps from that intro and give us a little glimpse of your own personal life.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me on, Amber. My personal life, like Amber had said, I have been an entrepreneur and worked closely in the last few years with my mentor, Bob. But more importantly, I like to talk about my family. I'm a proud father of 4 wonderful kids. And they kind of are my driving force in everything I do. I love being able to, teach and work closely with my kids. And my children range in quite the spread of a spectrum. My oldest being 25 all the way down to a 11-year-old. So I have a 25, 22, 16, and 11-year-old. So those are the main driving forces. That's always been my focus in what I do, both business and personal. So important to me.
Absolutely. And tell us, Mark, I know that we talked a little bit offline, but isn't there some sort of adventure you're going on with a couple members of your family?
Actually, there is. I've had a bucket list thing that has been weighing on me for about the last 6 years. For those who know anything about the Grand Canyon, I'm actually going to take my son, who's 22, and my stepdaughter, who's 16, and we're going to go hike rim to rim from the north rim of the Grand Canyon to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Now, to a lot of people, that might not sound too exciting, or what's the big deal? How far could it be? Total distance is 23 miles for a distance. We're going to do it in 3 days, and I look at it as a great challenge, something I can teach them about making a goal, setting a goal, and actually achieving something that you set your mind to. So it'll be fun.
Oh, it'll be awesome. And Grand Canyon, supposedly the sunrise and the sunset are remarkable there. So please take some photos and share with us, because it's definitely still a bucket list item for myself as well.
Absolutely. Love the pictures.
Yeah, definitely, Mark. Well, thank you so much. You are absolutely amazing and definitely a role model for your kids. And thank you so much for sharing all that with us and being on our show today. We really are honored to have you here. So, as you are aware, our listeners are parents or parents-to-be that realize ownership is key to not only to our parenting or business, but in life in general. And along that parenting journey, we can lose sight of that. However, if we focus on life as a game or an activity or a sport, not only can we learn to let go easier, but we can also gain strength from our mistakes and design our core focus to be one of laughter, joy, and most importantly, having fun, just like a 5-year-old kid in a sandbox. So this week, our entire interview will be off the paved roads and onto the dirt tracks to begin our 4-wheel driving adventure in the great outdoors. Welcome to our ride called Shifting Gears to Our Next Level. Now, as you guys are all aware, this is just an analogy and we can create and design our lives any way we want. Mark, this is your chosen activity, so let's go through your daily activities and how you make it work with your life and expertise. So one of the elements of off-roading is connection. Now, life and business is all about connection. It's connecting with people, it's connecting with ourselves, connecting with nature, and the list goes on. However, it's also about disconnecting too, especially with technology and spending quality time listening and being present with our family and loved ones, including our individual selves. So, Mark, how has off-roading allowed you to connect to a higher level of not only your business game, but also as a dad with your children and family?
Well, the thing that I always look at with off-roading is the location. I love taking the kids, taking the ATVs, the Jeep, loading up and going where most people never go. And to me, that's just what it's about. It's connecting with nature, or like you said, disconnecting from the normal everyday run of the mill, the hectic schedules we have, the businesses, all the different clients. It really gives us a chance to get out, get back to the core elements of what is important. And it's able to teach your children, your family, everything, the basic needs, the basic necessities that really, really, really tie us into nature, our lives, our business. I always look at it like this, Amber. I always look at when you go out and you go back and go into a forest, you go back into a trail that maybe there's been very few people that's back there, and you start looking at the geological formations of the rock, or you look at the amazing scenery, the trees, the sunset, all these things that were formed years and years and hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and you think basically about how the laws of nature have put those things into place to generate what it is. And then you equate it back into your life and you think about how it ties into your life. You can't change those laws, just like there's certain laws that we have to teach not just our children, but ourselves about how and what are important in your business, in your life. That's one of the things I always talk to my kids about is the law of attraction. What you put out, you get back. And you cannot change that. Just like gravity, just like, the law of gestation, those things happen naturally in nature. And it's important to me to go out and teach them these lessons, to show them these things that most people don't get a chance to go see, to take them back into these areas and take myself back into these areas, to let our minds unwind and start thinking more back to the core elements of what's important.
Absolutely. I love that. Could you actually give us an example of a law that you have learned that you have recently taught your children about it as well?
Well, I mean, everyone always talks about the law of attraction. I think that's a great law. But one of the ones that really comes to mind is something, that I look at as the law of gestation. And I know I just talked about that a little bit, but I want you to think about it in terms of not putting a seed in the ground, but we talked about it just last week with one of the kids, the 16-year-old actually. The wonderful teen years that they know all the things, but think about an idea that's placed into your mind. And her and I had this discussion about, why are you making the decisions you're making? And so often it's, I don't know. That's the standard response. So think about it with your own self. You always say that. Why did you do that? I don't know. Well, don't do it again. Okay. And then they do it again. And I taught her about the law of gestation. I said, you can go out into the garden, you can go down into my aquaponics garden in my basement, and you can plant a seed. And it's going to take a set amount of time for that seed to germinate and grow and become what it's usable. That idea that she has planted in her mind, the ideas that we put in our mind, have that same thing. They have a law of gestation. And they're going to create a seed to an idea, to an actual result that we planted. And it's going to happen because that's how nature designed it. A seed is an idea. An idea is a seed. And wherever it gets planted, it's going to grab root and it's going to take hold. Now, if you plant that negative doubt seed in your mind, which is what happens to my 16-year-old, negativity, I can't do that. I'm not smart enough to do that. I'm not able to do that. All these things become what actually happens. And that's what the law of gestation is about. Plant the right seed, plant the positive seed, and guess what grows? The positive plant, the positive idea, the positive result. So it's just like laws of nature. That's why I love the laws of the universe. They're so definite and they're so set.
That's brilliant, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing that and giving us such a real life scenario example as well, which is massive. And that's huge. And that's something that we not only take as from teens or even children, from children to teens, but we can even carry that into adulthood. And you can see that in that negative seed or doubt, how you said it, in many adulthoods on a day-to-day basis as well. And that can still be changed. You don't have to live that way. So that's brilliant.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
how did you learn those lessons for yourself? Was that through your personal mentorship with Bob, or did you have other coaches and guidance along the way?
No, honestly, most of the stuff I've learned, Bob told me when I first started mentoring with him a few years ago. He actually uses this term quite often with a lot of people. He referred to me as an unconscious competent. He said that I'm someone that's had success with different things but didn't know why. And that's the same thing here. You know, a lot of these laws that I've learned, a lot of the way I deal with things now is now mentored or is now brought about by how I was mentored with Bob, the things I've learned with dealing with Bob, the lessons I've learned from Bob. Now I've had other mentors, and I'm not going to say I haven't. I've been lucky to have a lot of good mentors in my life ever since I was 19 years old. But the lessons I've learned in the last 7 years have been tremendous by working so closely with Bob, using his material, studying his material over and over again, and being able to facilitate and teach in real life scenarios from my life lessons, the things that I didn't realize what was happening with me in my life, and the success and lack of success I was having, and how it actually equated to why it was happening for me and why it was happening, as we often say, to me. It was really powerful to understand these things and these teachings from Bob.
Absolutely. And Bob, because I've done a little bit of Bob's work, not as obviously thoroughly as detailed as you have, but Bob talks a lot about paradigms. Could you actually touch on that and how that has shifted your unconscious, subconscious mind into something more subconsciously competent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I always tell people, when I first got introduced to the word paradigm, with Bob, he asked me a question, and actually it was kind of funny. Not looking back now, he asked me if I knew what a paradigm was. I said, yeah, it's 20 cents, and he kind of looked at me and he's like, no, that's not it. And really, it's kind of a funny thing when you think about it. A paradigm is just a multitude of habits and the ideas that we have fixed in our subconscious mind, or what I would refer to as just like your computer. It's the programming that we've had from the time we were a young child, even before we were actually born, up until the time we are current right now. It's all the ideas and habits that's programmed into our subconscious mind that creates the behavior and the results that we actually have in our life, good or bad.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's just it's very simple, to the point, exactly explanation of it. Have you actually not only and I'm certain of this, that I know you can have used it in your own business life, and you've shifted your paradigms in business, as you've even just openly said before. But have you actually shared that with your children and seen the different lessons that they may have learned and had their own paradigm shifts based on your facilitating and guiding them to think a little bit differently?
Absolutely, we have. So much in the children, it's what we teach them that creates their programming. And you got to think about that. How did you learn to like the foods you like? How did you learn to have the habits in your life that you had? It came from your programming from a young child. I tell people a lot of times, especially my kids, when you look at the friends and the people you're around, that's the things that you learn. You become the combination of all those, the people, the things you put into your head, the music you listen to, the things you read, the movies you watch. All these things are what creates our programming. So look at what the paradigm shift would actually amount to. And it's, what are your results? You want to know what your paradigm is? And I ask them that all the time. You want to know what your paradigm is? And they always say the same thing. Yeah, what's my paradigm? Well, look at your result. Look at what you're doing. And that's going to determine how your programming is. That's going to determine what you want. Do you like the current result you're getting? And that's the question I ask them all the time. Are you actually happy with the result you had from the decision you made? And if the answer is no, change it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Change it. Because who makes the decision? You do. And if it's not what you want, change it. And it's all based on our programming. Like I said, the foods we eat, the clothes we wear, the things we do, the habits we have are all our paradigms. They're our programming. And we have to determine which ones we like, because not all are bad. So many times people think that the paradigm is a bad word, and it's not, because it's just the things that you choose to get the result you want. You can put positive programming into your mind to get positive results, to do the things you want, which is what I looked at, from my business perspective. How do I look at what I want in my business? How do I get the result I want in my business? And like I said earlier, I was unconscious competent for many years. I had no clue why I had success in the depression and downturn in 2008 when I was growing while everyone else was losing their homes, losing their businesses, struggling. What was I doing different? And I didn't know. But it was the attitude I had. It was the way I looked at it, the things I did that others weren't willing to do, that made me have the success I had. And I didn't realize that till I started understanding more on what the paradigm was, what the programming was, why the success I was having was the reason I was having it was because of what I was actually programming myself with. So I hope that answered that.
It really did. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark. And that's actually going to shift us into our next element, because you talked about change. And our next element is speeding and pacing. So there's always a time and a place to accelerate by putting our foot on the gas and or keep a calm, steady pace, especially in business. How have you actually gauged your own individual limits to set that pace within your own business perspective, life perspective, and as a relationship, keeping a kid's family of four, all that happy? How have you set your own gauges?
That's a good question. And I look at it this way. I don't really gauge my limits. I set my gauge and where I'm going based on my results and my actions. Because I don't believe that we even touch remotely the potential. And why would we set limits? I always look in my children and in employees, or even people I work with on a coaching level. If I ask you, what is your limit? They're going to only go to what they feel their limit is. I recently had a conversation with a client that I went around to all 20 of their employees and asked them where they felt they were as a business, as far as where did they reach their max limits, or were they at their max potential of their business. Majority of their people thought they had roughly 80 to 90% of the customer base that was available for their max potential. And most people only do what they feel their max limit is. They never do more than they absolutely have to do for most people. So I don't believe in gauging limits. I believe in creating the results and the activities to do the potential that I feel is where I'm going to be, or where I want to be, the results I want to see, the results I want to achieve, because I'll work to that point. Most people will work to that point rather than limiting what they should do or can do.
I love that you changed that, because not to say it was a trick question, but it's also considering, because I remember when my first business coach said to me, don't make your minimum your maximum. And it's the exact same thing. It's like, why do you have to set yourself to that bar? Why can't you do that, 2 extra millimeters or that extra reach and just stretch a little farther? And it's more focusing, like you said, on the results and the actions and just constantly changing and tweaking to get there. So I love that you said that. What do you recommend, and when do you recommend to others as a coach yourself to begin shifting gears and stepping up? Because a lot of people don't realize or give themselves permission to be able to step up. We all have it in us, but because, like you said, the programming and our conditioning, we think this is it, when we all have that extra 2 millimeters or more to give. When do you recommend that?
My recommendation is this. The first thing I ever look and ask to anyone I talk to, anyone I work with, is, what do you want? And that's the very first thing they have to decide. Are they where they want to be? Are they happy with the results they're getting? Do they feel that they can have or should have or want to have something different? And if they say yes, if they say they're not happy with where they currently are, then the time to shift gears and step up is right now. That's the first part of the equation. When do we do it? When you think that when you're ready to make a decision that you're not happy about where you're at, when you're ready to commit to actually saying, I don't like where I'm at. I don't like the results I'm getting. I want more. I want something different. That's when you shift gears. That's when you change course direction. You course correct, and we start stepping up and pushing people to what they want. That's the main starting point, is when they're ready, when they say they want it now, when they're ready to make a decision now.
Do you find when they say, I want this, but then they stop themselves and they say, but I don't know how? How do you handle that?
I love that, because I always refer to that as the biggest gap in anyone's life is from what they know they want or what they know they can do to what they do. Most people don't know how, but guess what? The how isn't important. The decision is the important part. The how will present itself once the decision is made. And I always think about not just myself, but all the people I deal with, all the people I talk to, my kids, Amber, my other half, all these things that whenever we've made a decision, we really didn't know how we were going to make it happen, but we made a decision. And when you make a decision, the universe has a real amazing way of presenting the how once you make the decision. If you said, you know what, Mark, I want to buy a new house. Well, go buy one. Well, I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. Well, that isn't the question. Have you made the decision that you're going to go buy the house? Well, no, because I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. The how doesn't matter. Making the decision is the first thing. When that happens is another part of the equation. The how is not the most important part. The decision that you're going to do it is the most important part. And I always think back. I had a business up until 2016. I had a business for 20 years that was a retail business in the States here. And it was in the trailer industry. So it was one of these I started from scratch. I built it up to 4 locations. We had a very good business. And like most people, you sometimes get stuck in a rut. And I admit I got stuck in a rut, wasn't really sure where I was wanting to go, what I was wanting to do. And that was, when I went back to really diving back deep into Bob and dealing a lot with Bob. That's what really brought me back in connection with Bob. Was I watched The Secret. And I know that anyone that's out there that's ever watched that movie, that's an amazing, amazing movie to watch. And one thing I did was I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something that I don't know why, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch this and listen to this for 30 days. And I'm going to watch it in the morning. I'm going to watch it at night. I need to figure out where I'm trying to go, what I'm trying to do, what I'm actually trying to accomplish. And as I started watching this, things all of a sudden started popping into my head about 2 weeks into it. And I started getting this vision of, you know what? I'm going to sell my business. Now, I don't know why I wanted to sell my business. I didn't want to sell my business. I was happy with my business. I was just stuck in a rut. I knew that there was more. I knew I had more waiting for me. I just didn't know what it was. I was at that crossroads. And I sat down one day and I started writing down that my ideal purchaser of my business, what he actually would be, what that person would look like, what that person would do with that business, how that person could take that business and pull it to the next level, that maybe I was limiting my thought process on. And I actually put it down so clear. I actually put a number down of what I would sell that business for to that person. And oddly enough, after I was doing that for about 30 days, within less than 2 months, there was a knock on my door. And this knock on my door was a client that I had dealt with for years. It was actually a vendor that I'd dealt with for many years. And they come knocking on my door and said, you know what? We need to talk. And it's like, well, I'm busy. I don't have time to talk to you right now. We got a lot going on. And they said, no, we need to talk. We want to talk about acquiring your business. And this was a national company that had locations all throughout the US and Canada. And here they were knocking on my little doorstep wanting to talk. I said, well, that's fine. Let's sit down and talk. Sign here so you don't take my information and run. And we actually sat down, and less than 2 months later from that first meeting, they were the proud owners of my business. And when I started looking back about 6 months after the transition, when the dust settled and I kind of finally realized what had happened, I happened to look at the number, and that number that they paid for my business was almost identical to the number I had written down on the paper not that long ago. And I think back, why is that important? What's so, interesting about that? Well, it's making a decision. I had wrote down something on paper. I had committed something to paper. I had put it out into the universe, and guess what the universe did? The universe connected it with the person on the opposite side that was looking to do the same thing. And the two were connected mysteriously. And I think that's just one of those things that most people don't realize. It's making a decision. It's starting to write down clearly what you're wanting.
That's amazing, Mark. Congratulations on selling it and getting that out there. And even just making that decision to watch The Secret over and over again for 30 days and committing to it. Because not only is the decision a huge aspect, but the commitment and keeping to it, especially when there's days I'm sure you didn't feel like it, or waking up early, or staying up late, watching it and drilling in your head. So phenomenal job to you. No problem. The last piece of that is, it sounds to me that you don't focus so much on speed, because a lot of people, right, if they made that decision, they want it to happen now and they want to happen it fast. How have you adapted speed into your decision making and also into your results and your actions?
Absolutely. I never look at speed as an important factor. I love speed. Don't get me wrong. I love to drive fast. I love to, take and run off road fast, but that's just that portion of it. When it comes to my life and my business, I don't see speed as important. You know what really to me is the most important thing is probably the attitude is important for the team building. The intentionality, the commitment, the decision, the action that you take to create that team building perspective, that importance of how you build that team properly. Speed, it's like a society that we've created that we have the microwave effect. We put water on a stove and it has to boil in a certain amount of time, but we put it in the microwave, we think it should boil that much faster. And, we want things here and now, and that's just not the way it is. You have to be able to look at, are you ready and willing to get what you want? Do you have the attitude to get what you want? Is it intentional, the decision you're making? Are you committing to the decision you're making? And then more importantly, are you doing the behaviors and actions to get to that point? That's the most important part. Speed, not as important to me.
Amazing. I love that, Mark. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'm going to shift gears into assessing the route. So another element of off-roading. And sometimes we can get so far off the beaten path, like you said, that you were lost there, right? You didn't know that you wanted to sell the business and you were just stuck in a rut. And we can have glorious distractions on that beautiful beaten path that we're completely off. And we actually sometimes forget where we're headed or why we're headed in a direction. When you set your clear defined destination and you go off-roading, how do you actually keep that clear vision up in your life to remind yourself of exactly your direction that you're heading in your personal or business life?
Well, what I always look at is, where do I want to be? Whether it be if I'm out hiking, if I'm out off-roading, if I'm in my business, where do I want to be? What am I trying to actually get to? Where am I trying to get to? Because I always look at, we could go in a lot of different places, and we can get lost anywhere we go. It doesn't matter. I can get lost, in a city, out in the woods. I can get lost in business. Anyone can, as far as that goes. But it's defining clearly where it is. But you know what I think is more important to people, to everyone, to myself included, is using the tools you have and being aware of where you're at along the way of where you're going. And I always think about it in regards to, I had an experience about 2 years ago when I was out hiking. And I love to hike. It's one of my favorite things. I love to take my kids, and I love to go out and hike, love to take them out into nature. But I was out by myself on this particular time. And what I think about is I got to wandering, and, I do a lot of that. I get out there and I'll get on the trail of something. It might be, at this time I was out in the forest, and I was actually following, some deer that I was tracking. And I kind of had gotten back into an area where I hadn't been very often. And, you start getting back into some of these areas and everything kind of looks the same. And all of a sudden, I think everyone can relate. You've been somewhere where all of a sudden you get that seed of worry, doubt, fear that kind of pops into your mind thinking, wonder where I'm at, and it really kind of puts the fear of panic in there. But most of the time you have to learn to just harness that fear, harness that thought, and take it and create it into something that you can actually utilize, which is thinking clearly, knowing where your surroundings are, knowing where you're at for your benchmarks currently in business or out in there. Like that situation, I was looking around thinking, okay, I know where I'm at. I can handle this. And you start hiking back out. And for me, I was hiking back out about 3 miles uphill because, out in this area, we're all mountains. So I'm hiking back uphill from this stream that I came across, which I thought I knew where I was. And I'm hiking and I'm hiking. And what happens when you've been probably 3 miles back in? You got to come 3 miles back out. And at this time, I had a pack on my back that was about 60 pounds. And I'm thinking, this could suck because it's starting to get dark. It's starting to the sun's starting to go down. I'm thinking it's going to get cold tonight because it's fall. So, the snow could come in. And all of a sudden I thought, you know what? You don't ever stop. You just keep pushing through. You just keep working. You don't think about where your end destination is. You think about where you're at right now and where you're going to be. Don't think about the end, because if you think about the end, you're going to get tired. You're going to want to sit down. You're going to want to quit. Think about what your next benchmark is. My next benchmark is here. My next benchmark is here. My next benchmark is here. And within about 45 minutes, I had hit all my benchmarks. And I came out to the main road of where I knew I was within a mile from back to where I needed to be. But I thought about that in relation to my business. And I thought, how many times do we get in our business and we think, oh, this is just too hard. Oh, I'm not getting the results I want. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to try something different. And to me, I really, really, really equate that back to how I've always ran my business, how I've taught my kids. You don't look at the end of where you want to be. You understand where you want to be, but you look at the benchmarks where you need to go along the way to get to where you want to be. That's the key to it. Don't stop. Just keep taking these little incremental steps to make the trip complete, to get to where you need to be.
I love that, Mark, because it just puts things into perspective with bite-sized chunks. And at those benchmarks, like you said, that's where you could also even reward yourself. If you need to take, a 5-minute break, a water break, but you're still pushing through, you're not going to stop there. This is, okay, I'm on the route to get to where I want to go. This is along the journey. I love that. And I have to actually bring into another perspective, because also this is a huge factor on different personalities, right? People can think differently about these benchmarks and, especially say type A personalities or in other assessments. And I'm going to ask you, I believe you do DISC assessments, and if you can touch on that shortly. But obviously that determines different elements as well from different personalities. When you're starting off with your clients, do you actually do an assessment first before you actually get them to then go ahead and set their destination to then determine different benchmarks and adhere to different personalities? Or is it always that same structure, that cookie cutter?
No, I absolutely model it around personalities. I model it around the assessments that I do. DISC is absolutely one of my favorite to utilize. But here's the thing about it. Like you just said, there's all these different personality types that are out there. Everyone has taken an assessment of some type. But here's what I like about an assessment. If we're dealing with being able to assess our clients, our customers, our employees, our kids, whatever it is, we need to know, more importantly, how we communicate with those different personalities, because that's the thing that everyone fails to realize. In a relationship, they're like, well, my spouse never listens to me. My kids never listen to me. I do this and I do that, and they never do this. Or maybe it's your employee. My employees just don't listen. They always do this. They just tune me out. Well, it all stems from the different types of personalities. So when I start working with a client, or when I start talking to anyone, it can be a customer, I assess based on what that personality type is, because it helps me better communicate with that person to be on their level. Not to change what the message is, but to know how to effectively communicate what's important to get them to where they want to be. Because I always tell people in sales, we always think that we sell with our mouth. We don't. We sell with our heart, and we sell with our ears. We have to listen to what they're saying, and we have to have the kindness and the caringness in our heart to actually want to help and create a solution for those person. We don't sell with our brains, and we don't sell with our mouth. We sell with our ears, we sell with our heart. And that's the same thing in communicating with any person. You have to listen more, say less. You have to care more, be willing to help that person, listen to that person. And maybe it's just that's all they want, is someone to listen to them, to actually be able to be an open ear, a kind heart, whatever it is. And that's why I love DISC, because it helps me assess people quickly and be able to know where they are, what type of personality they are, so I can better help and serve them.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Mark. For those listeners who aren't aware of DISC and or other communication tools that you would recommend, could you just elaborate what DISC is and also share other potential how you learn to communicate effectively?
Yeah, DISC is just a assessment that was actually developed back in the early 1920s, based on certain key factors of personalities. There's four personality types. There's a dominant, there's an influence, there's a steady, and there's the communicator. So knowing those four different styles, it's important that people start understanding where they fall into that quadrant. And it's just based on certain key factors that people can do. Are you fast-paced and outgoing? Are you cautious and reflective? Are you questioning and skeptical? Are you accepting and warm? These simple questions help people determine where that personality falls into one of those four quadrants of that circle. Now, how does that help teams? How does that help people communicate better? Well, it's how those personalities interact with each other. I always equate it to the rubber band effect. If you take a rubber band and you put it on your hand and you stretch it, the energy is expended on the way out, not on the way back. So a personality type in communications, if they're a D communicating with an S, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, and they have to expend more energy to effectively communicate with that other personality type. And that's why it's important to know that, because if you feel drained after you've talked to someone, like, you can increase your energy level to speak with that person, but when you're done, you just feel wiped out. They're probably an opposite personality type from where you are. And so with that, I'm able to take, and what I like about it is, modeling it into the productive conflict resolution model for businesses, personal, whatever you want to utilize it for in just regular communications. That personality type helps you be able to have productive conflict resolution rather than being in a conflict and trying to work your way out of it. How do we not get into a conflict? How do we learn to communicate and utilize that better to not get in that situation? Same thing with team building. How do we make our teams work better? How do we make our family units work better together? Because even in your own families, how many people have different levels of personality in your families? Even though you came from the same loin of the mother and father, it might be that, each one has its own unique style and personality. So it's just a good tool for using that.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for thanks so much for elaborating on that, Mark. We're going to switch into the final element, which is called flat tires and high-rise waterways. And that's just because there's always going to be challenges along our life pathway. It's how we handle these challenges that will determine our destiny. So throughout all of your off-roading experiences, what was one of your biggest challenges you had, and how did you overcome it, and did you relate that back into business and life? Now, if it was just that example you just shared a couple years ago, you can use that, or was there another one that you may have had that was really outstanding for yourself?
Oh, I've had so many. It's just the random experiences that happen every time you're out there. I actually had it's funny, but it's not funny. But this last year, we were up in the mountains. There was myself and three other people, and we were very, very, very remote back, not an area that most people would be. And this is where preparation is a huge thing anytime you start a task or do something. You should always think about things that maybe could happen rather than worrying about it. I didn't do that. We left the camp, we took off, we got way back in the middle of nowhere. Once again, like par for course, it started to get about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At that time of the year, it gets dark roughly about 5:30. And all of a sudden, I happened to realize on my dash of my Jeep that we were losing air pressure rather quickly in one of the tires. And I wasn't too concerned with it. It's a flat tire. That happens. Until I realized I left the tools in the trailer back at camp. And I had no tools to get the spare tire on the vehicle. I had a jack, but I had no lug wrench. I had no lug tool, and I had no lock removal tool for the spare tire. Oddly enough, once again, we're way back in the middle of nowhere, started thinking, what are we going to do? Who are we going to call? Because by the time we call someone, the closest person is at least an hour and a half away, if not further, if we can get anyone on the phone, because cell service is limited. And it just became one of those things where the people with us were starting to get a little nervous. And I said, hey, let's not worry about it. Let's get creative. Let's figure out what a solution would be. And with that, it became a solution. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? We can spend a night in the vehicle. We have gas. We have a vehicle that runs. We just have a flat tire. But by sheer luck, up the trail comes three individuals in a vehicle who just happened to have the right tool that we needed for a lock tool to get the lock off the tire, to get the tire on the vehicle, to get us out and back into where we could be. Now, was it a late night? Yes, we got back well beyond where we normally would. But was it an experience? Yeah, because you think about it, how many times do things happen that you didn't plan on? How many times does lack of preparation become a problem? Too often. But if you worry about the problem rather than what do we do to actually take care of the situation, you're going to only focus on the problem. And that's why I always I never worry about a problem. I always I come up with a solution. I always look to be a solution provider rather than a problem thinker.
Love it. I'm glad you got out too, Mark. That's brilliant. And it does just happen. I think that we've all been in those situations, but it's having that faith and thinking, like you said, being creative and, what is the worst case scenario and are you happy to live with it? and that's, who cares if you had to camp out? You get to see the stars out there if you had to sleep in the Jeep, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so going into problems, because you talked about that, do you see challenges as problems or opportunities? Or another word?
I always look at everything as an opportunity.
And how?
Because really,
Sorry, go
that's
ahead.
what they are.
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely.
they are.
And how has that one simple change of perspective completely changed your life pathway?
The biggest thing that's really changed it is if you look as everything as an opportunity, or better yet, every time you look at something that's going on, how do you look at it? What do you look at as a result? Is it a negative or is it a positive? Was the decision good? Was the decision bad? And to be honest with you, most people say, well, that was a good decision. Oh, that was a bad decision. Oh, that's a good opportunity. Oh, this is a bad opportunity. But really, when you look at it, there is no such thing as a good or bad. It's only a decision. It's only what you choose to make of it. The outcome may be good or bad, but that doesn't mean that the decision is good or bad. We have to look at as everything we make as a decision. Choose what the decision is. Choose what opportunity is put in front of you. Don't make the decision. That could be a bad opportunity. That could be a bad decision. Just say, hey, it's a decision. Now let's see where it goes. Now let's see what happens. We're going to make the best of it. Because in everything, I always think back to W. Clement Stone, who was, in 1970 was one of the wealthiest men, in the U.S., but he started an insurance company, and he had a statement I've never forgotten. I still have a recording of it that I listen to quite regularly. He would always say that everything that happened, he would have one response, and he would say, "That's good." And didn't matter what it was, the response was always the same, "That's good." And then he'd find the good in it. He would look for the good in it. Because if you think back to everything that happened, maybe you had a relationship that went bad and it ended, and you think, oh my gosh, that was a bad relationship. But it led you to the relationship that you were hoping to have, the dream relationship you wanted. Maybe you lost your job, but it led you to the job that you were absolutely was your dream job or the opportunity you wanted to. You have to look for the good in every situation. And that's the same thing here. Look for the good in every opportunity that's put in front of you. Don't look at it as a problem. Look for what's good in it and then go find it.
Absolutely. I love that. There's always a gift. I'm a firm believer of that. And it sounds like to me, Mark, that you also, your words, your vocab is crucial. It's so powerful, and that you believe that. Have you had certain words throughout your entrepreneurial journey and your own personal development journey that you found that you had to eliminate, and that you actually changed that perspective to use on a day-to-day basis?
I would say there's very few words I've changed. I look at everything the same way. I don't use the word can't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the word that's impossible, because nothing is impossible. I don't like the negative connotation of any words that come out. I always want to look and see what things come good. Just like when someone tells me, I want to lose weight. Why do you want to lose weight? Well, I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the weight I'm at. Yeah, but why do you want to lose anything? Change the wordage. Because if I lost my keys, you know what the first thing I do is? I look for them. If I lose my cell phone, the first thing I do is look for it. Change the words, because our mind attracts what that connotation is. So if the word has a negative connotation, guess what you're going to attract? The negative outcome. Because if you're thinking about, lack of money, bills, making more money, guess what you're going to be thinking about? The lack of money. Guess what you're going to get? The lack of money. Guess what you're going to get? More bills. I tell people all the time, and I tell myself this every single day, choose your words carefully. Positivity is the key. You must keep onto the positive vocabulary, the positive mindset. Attract what you want. I want positive, so guess what I think? positive. Guess what I put in my head? Positive. That's why I listen to Bob all the time, because it puts a positive mental image into my mind. It puts the positive vibration into me that helps me focus more on what I want, what I'm able to do, what I'm able to provide.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mark. We're going to wrap up today. You have shared so much greatness with us today. I've taken so many notes, and I'm sure our listeners can't wait to get in touch with you. But before that, is there anything you'd like to add to our conversation before we wrap it up and people find out how to get in touch with you?
The only advice I always tell people is that I really want people to focus on is whatever we impress, we must express. So make your attitude the most important thing every day. Focus on that. Focus on changing and getting what you want based on your attitude. Impress positivity to express positivity. That's a key. Makes a happy life and makes people want to be around you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mark. So please tell us, how can we get in touch with you? How can we work with you? We are an employer and we want to hire you for our corporation. Please share with us, and I will put this all into the show notes as well.
Absolutely. They can get a hold of us online. They can visit our website, www.nextlevelworldwide.com. That's nextlevelworldwide.com. Love everyone out there to join our Facebook community. We have a Facebook webpage out there. It is Next Level Entrepreneurs. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, it is a great site and community to be a part of. A lot of positivity comes through there. A lot of people help share the great thoughts that they want to have. And of course, they can always friend me on Facebook, stalk me on Facebook, send me a personal message. I love to connect with every one of your listeners out there, even if it's just to know more about who they are, where they're at, and what they do. It's really important to me that we create a community of like-minded individuals throughout the world that share the message of positivity.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually teach the DISC assessment as well. So if someone wants to take the assessment too, you could also get them working on that. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All my coaching, all my assessments, all my material is not only in person. We do online assessments. We do online coursework and facilitation. So wherever they're at, we can always connect them up worldwide with all our material.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. You have been absolutely brilliant. We're so honored to have you on the show today. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you to come on today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on, Amber.
Anytime. Well, thanks so much, listeners. This is it. So if you obviously love this episode as much as I have, choose your preferred platform. We're on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, Stitcher, and Spotify. Subscribe and follow, and you can get the latest episode. Next week, we have a phenomenal guest as well. So keep your eye out for that, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.